So what we have is a wonderful new way to give you information here in the Quilt Along with Pat Sloan group. Facebook has developed these live audios so that you're listening live. You can listen anywhere you want. Today I have got a wonderful chat with Rachel Greger from the Virginia Quilt Museum, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about the community. Then we're going to talk with my friend Jane Davidson from Australia. So I'm going to get Rachel ready here. If she can unmute herself, we will go ahead and start. Hi Rachel, how are you?
Good, how are you today, Pat?
I'm wonderful. It is a beautiful day here in Virginia, isn't it?
Oh, it is one of the better days here in Virginia.
Right, for August it's a really good day. For those who don't know, the Virginia Quilt Museum is in Harrisonburg, Virginia, which is down a little bit further south from me. I am up in Northern Virginia. So Rachel, do you live near the museum?
Yes, I'm currently a master's student at James Madison University, which is also in Harrisonburg. So I've been here. I also did my undergrad here in JMU as well. So I've been here for about 7 years now.
Oh wow, that's home now, right?
Yes, it is. I love it.
So can you just tell me a few things that go on that you have been involved with, or what your job is with the Virginia Quilt Museum?
Yeah, of course. So I've been with the museum for about a year now, and I am the curatorial and collections assistant. We're also in a little bit of a transition period, so I'm also the acting interim director. I've done a couple things for the museum, but the one that I'm most actively working on at the moment is digitizing our entire collection so that it can be available to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
That's a big job, Rachel. That's a big job.
Yes. Currently, I have our entire education collection in there. I don't even think I have a fourth of our permanent collection. And then I have a couple objects here or there, like sewing machines and dolls that came in with quilts. But I have a very long way to go. But I'm very excited to see that end product.
Yeah, won't it be just wonderful to be able to just tell people, if you want to see an example of that, then go to the website.
Exactly. That's the overall goal. We have so many wonderful quilts in our collection and so many styles, but being able to show all of them at once. Currently, we have 48 of our quilts up from our permanent collection, and we are wall-to-wall quilts. There would be no way to showcase everything all at once. So we're hoping to get that up and running within the next couple years now.
So the museum does a lot of different things. The exhibits are rotating like twice a year right now?
We try for twice a year, sometimes up to 4 times a year.
Okay, so the museum, for those of you who don't know, is a old pre-Civil War home. So it is massively interesting to go inside because you're in a home and you're going in all these different rooms. What part do you like best about the actual building the museum's in?
So the museum, like you said, is pre-Civil War. It was built in 1856, and it's gone through a couple owners. We call it the Warren Sipe House. The original owner was Edward Warren, and then later on, it was owned by a man named George Sipe. A lot of people love to come see it for the Civil War history. It was a hospital at one point. My absolute favorite, and I do have an archaeological background. We do have tons of house archaeology from doing renovations over the years to give, electricity and air conditioning to this very beautiful old home. So I got to go through our archaeological collection and put together a little case that talks about that. But we also have a jail cell in our house at one point, which is very cool. At one point, it was the jail for Rockingham County and Harrisonburg area, just like a temporary holding cell. And we've decided to keep that up in the museum, so it's still available for people to go look at.
Yeah, at one point there were like government offices in there, right?
Yes, it was owned by the city at one point, and they operated out of it, but it wasn't anything too crazy. But we're very lucky to have it. It's interesting that you say how wonderful the exhibits process is here. It's actually a challenge to put up these big, beautiful quilts up. I'll talk about it in a little bit, but we have one exhibit in the basement that's 28 absolute beautiful art quilts. And I saw that number of 28 quilts, and I had a little panic moment thinking, how are we going to be able to show these so perfectly? But we've worked it out. We've had a wonderful system of trial and error here at the museum, and we're really happy to showcase as much as we can to you all.
Yeah, I think that is probably the interesting part, is because it's not just a sort of blank walls like traditional museums. You have to really work around like a unit that's in the wall for some electricity or something like that. You have to work around all that.
Yeah, we have some old school radiators that are still up, and that's always a challenge in the winter. That's wall space we just can't even use because of any potential risk it could have. We have some big, beautiful original windows that we sometimes like to put a quilt in front of. We have blocking UV blinds so it doesn't damage the quilt, but that's always been a challenge, is working around these beautiful windows. But I think we do a pretty good job here, if I do say so myself.
Oh, yeah, it is. And I hung my own exhibit, so it was amazing to work with the curator at the time, trying to, by long distance, figure out how the quilts were going to hang in there. And then I came in and then physically got the opportunity to hang the pieces myself with my husband. So that was really fun. That was a neat thing. So you have been involved with several different projects, and tell me what one of your favorites has been.
Well, let's see. I have so many. Are you speaking specifically about events or exhibits?
Sure.
Or just
Let's do an event.
Go museum?
Yeah.
So events. I love our quilt evaluation days.
Yeah.
These are days where we have a quilt historian, some sort of quilt expert. They get to meet with visitors, and these visitors bring in a small fee and then one of their family quilts. And our quilt historian normally asks and says, hey, what do you believe to be the story? The visitor will tell them, and then the quilt historian just quickly glances at their quilt and can tell them how much of that story is grained in truth. And it's always a very awesome learning experience for me, for the visitors. Our quilt historians always end up taking pictures, and they go home and do additional research later. But it's also a little disheartening. We have had some people come in and say, this is my great-great-grandmother's quilt from before every war you could think of.
Yeah.
And then, our wonderful quilt historian looks at it and goes, no, I think it was made in like the 1970s.
Right. Oh, yeah.
But everyone gets to walk away learning something new, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to learn something very specific about your quilt, whether it's how to preserve it, how to care for it. Just so many interesting things you get from that process.
And you get to see real people's quilts, like the quilts that they're using in their family often. So that gives you like this other perspective, not like the museum quality quilts.
Correct, yes.
Yeah, so they can be a whole variety. Like I have a quilt from my husband's grandmother. We have one of hers, and it's a utility quilt, and my mother-in-law could say, well, these were my pajamas, and those were my sister's, shirts, that kind of a thing. Yeah. So do you have one that's something about one of the exhibits that has been, a favorite of yours so far?
Well, we just opened an exhibit, I believe 2 weeks ago now. We actually opened two new exhibits. One is a temporary exhibit that is on loan. It's a traveling exhibit curated by Pamela Weeks and Sandra Sider. It's called Deeds Not Words, and it talks about the 19th Amendment. That's the 28 art quilts that I had mentioned earlier.
Ah, okay.
The other one that we have up is about 40 quilts, most of which is in our collection. and it's talking about the Virginia heritage and the culture and traditions that you get to see in these quilts in the Shenandoah Valley, and then technically West Virginia before the Civil War. Mm-hmm. And out of all of those that are up right now, we have a beautiful crib quilt that I happen to have a nice little fondness of. And a lot of times it's hard to find a crib quilt that's in good condition. And this one's in pretty decent condition. It has a couple rips and tears, but that's to be expected. But it's still very bright. It's pink. It's blue. It's just everything you would want out of a crib quilt. And while we don't know the full story of it, it still has the ties of where it would have once been tied onto the bars of the crib. And it's a very treasured piece here at the museum. It's got zigzags, it's got stripes, it's just very fun, and I think any baby would have loved to be crawling around on that.
So when you have these quilts that are part of the museum stock, that are the museum collection, do most of them have some decent history to them, or do you have a lot of pieces that there's still a lot missing to know about them? Yeah.
Yes and no.
Right.
I've now been through every file that we have on our quilts as I'm working on digitizing it, and some quilts, we have such an impressive history to the point that we know exactly who the quilt maker was, how many children, the exact date, even time of death for some of these wonderful quilt makers. But for others, they are beautiful quilts. We can look at them and say that they're definitely a Virginia quilt, but that's the extent of our knowledge. We do have experts that do look at our quilts. We take in so many different opinions and try to present the most accurate stories possible with those. But a lot of the reasons we take those in is because there's something so stylistic about them that is a wonderful example of a streak of lightning border or clamshell quilting that we just couldn't pass up on.
Yeah, you need to have it.
Yes.
How many pieces a year do you accept into the museum? Because you only have so much space.
Yes, we only have so much space. We actually just recently moved all of our collection space. It was on our main level, and then we moved it to a different floor to get better air control and be a little bit more temperature controlled, as we are in this wonderful old house. That was a very fun process to move all of those. But we take in anywhere from 1 to 8 quilts. Sometimes we have had different numbers. There was one year a wonderful donor donated 27 quilts.
Wow.
Another year we had someone donate over 70 quilts. And they all get well loved and preserved here, and we try to display them as often as we can. That helps a little bit with the storage issue, but it is definitely a team effort here at the museum. We have wonderful volunteers who come in and they'll do sleeves and tags for us. They'll do some folding for us. And they absolutely love talking to our visitors and explaining the process of taking care of these very valuable heirloom quilts.
Now, you mentioned this briefly earlier about the teaching quilts. You have pieces that you can have people touch?
Yes, we do have an education collection. Sadly, we haven't done very much with it this past year due to the pandemic, but we do have some beautiful quilts that are able to leave the building safely. They can go to school groups, and school groups can learn quilting heritage. We can take them and loan them out to other museums. And it's a very simple process as opposed to trying to loan out one of our permanent collection items.
Right.
But I love our education collection. I was doing an inventory on it very recently, and I had people, as long as they had clean hands, they got to interact with the museum and all of these wonderful pieces that don't often get the love and attention that several other of our permanent collection pieces do.
Yeah. The other small thing that I wanted you to tell about, and then we'll talk about what's coming up in classes, but you have the little sewing machines.
Yes, we do.
I love them. I love them. I have to see them every time I go there. I have to go look at the sewing machines. They're so cute.
I adore sewing machines. That was one of the reasons I really wanted to work here. I come from doing material culture work and getting to interact with these sewing machines. Even one of the ones that we have on our main level constantly on display, I actually have in my parents' kitchen. They have it out there. So it makes me smile every time I see it. But we do have over 60 sewing machines that most of which were donated by the same wonderful collector. And that is my next ongoing project, is I want to have a little bit more interpretation for these sewing machines. Because they all came from the same collector, we don't actually know their history as well, but they are still remarkable examples of some of these crazy, amazing innovations to quilting and sewing in general that I look forward to creating some sort of wider interpretation. Currently, we just have a very bare minimum, and people do come in and they say, hey, that sewing machine is the same one my great-grandmother used. But I would love to have a little bit more for our wonderful guests to get to interact with.
Yeah, that would be really nice. I mean, it's finding the information is always a very long process. It takes a while, doesn't it?
Oh, it takes a very long while. There's some really good databases out there. Like Singer has a wonderful online database. But we have Sew Handies and so many other little merry mix-ups, and sadly don't have a lot of information on those. But that is what we're working on now. Good. You're going to do it. I know you will. Now, I appreciate that.
Yeah. One of the things that I declared myself, Rachel, the unofficial ambassador for the Virginia Quilt Museum. So, I'm
There's no one who would do it better.
Yeah, I'm always out sort of promoting, what's going on that the people who don't live near the museum can be involved with. And so there have been some online classes during this past year, and this is all found out at the website vaquiltmuseum.org. But there's a couple things coming out. There's one class with Mimi Dietrich, which is virtual. And tell people how they get involved with this?
So that is a wonderful class that's coming up by Mimi, and she's actually going to have an exhibit here starting mid-September. So we're looking forward to having that.
Oh, that's awesome.
It is going to be the coolest exhibit. It's going to be a 2-part event, both on Saturdays. And all information, like Pat said, can be found on our website under events. That's how you can pay for registration. But that is going to be a wonderful event that we're all very much looking forward to getting involved in.
Yeah, and another thing that you do for local people who are local, you have a stash blast. You do this where it's sort of like, people's fabrics that they want to sell, and the museum makes all the money.
Yeah. Yes. I don't know when our next one is going to be. We're still working out to see if we're able to go down to Blacksburg and participate in one, but it's a great event. We have wonderful people donate fabric, whether it's scraps or even whole yards. They'll donate fabric, and we sell it here at the Virginia Quilt Museum. You just come in, pick it up by the pound, by any way you want to participate. Yeah. It's a great fundraiser, and everybody walks around. I've seen people carry boxes of fabric to their car. Yeah. It's a great opportunity to get some very cool fabrics.
And the last thing to wrap up is I want to talk about the 25th anniversary celebration, because we weren't able to do that in 2020. It was supposed to be an in-person event. And I'm doing the MC part of it and a lot of interviews now for the online portion of it. So you want to go ahead and say when it is and let people know how to get involved?
Yeah, of course. So 2020 was our 25th anniversary, but sadly that didn't get to happen due to the pandemic, and we've rescheduled it for October 9th of this year. It'll be from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. and we're just going to have a bunch of interviews with some of our old directors, one of our dear friends, Jeffrey Evans, is going to be doing a presentation during it. And it's a free event, and all you have to do is register for a spot. And there's a link to it on our website under events. And it's going to be a really awesome and informative time. And sadly, we had a wonderful exhibit. It just went down, so we could put up this new exhibit.
Right.
But I was really sad to take it down, and it was highlights of our collection from when we first started taking quilts in 1992, and we would go through and pick one quilt that was brought in each year and just picked one that we thought best highlighted our collection. And it was a beautiful exhibit. You would have an 1850s quilt hung right next to a 2007 quilt, and just seeing that difference was wonderful. And I think they'll be highlighting that exhibit a little bit in this event, but it's going to be a fun time.
And it's all online, so this is a virtual event. Just to remind everybody that you can come worldwide, no matter what country you're in. You'll be able to attend this celebration and watch it, and it's free. So I'm going to be talking about it a lot.
As our ambassador, yeah.
Yes, as the unofficial ambassador, self-appointed. Oh, Rachel, this has been so wonderful to get all this neat information and behind the scenes of what goes on at the Virginia Quilt Museum. I'm very grateful for the work that you're doing for the museum. That is just wonderful.
Oh, thank you. It is a wonderful team effort. We have some amazing volunteers and staff here that have been the greatest support since I've been here, and especially with how the last year has gone, we are just so grateful for everyone who's been involved, whether you're a volunteer, a donor, anything like that. It has been absolutely wonderful to get to know you and get to work with you all.
Yeah. So thank you, Rachel. I'll see you later.
Thank you.
So what I want to do is tell you a little bit about my group, the Quilt Along with Pat Sloan group. There are fun things that we do for sew-alongs, and you can always get those by going to my website. I love to make quilts. We do talk about certain things like having a date with Jack. And Jack is Jack the Ripper, the seam ripper that we quilters often have to have. I do a lot of challenges, like a tidy up challenge, just sew 10 minutes today, just to be sure you do that. I also sometimes will refer to things as being there's 800 of those, 800 of this, 800 of that. And it's just my funny way of saying that there's a lot. I have a lot of it. And you might also hear me reference my husband as the shipping department because he works with me, and it's not really a whole department. It is just Greg. The last thing I want to tell you before we go and get connected here with Jane is that I do have a calendar so that you can keep track of what we're doing here in our group, in our community, and that can be downloaded at my website, I Love to Make Quilts. So if you download the calendar every month, then you'll be able to keep up and know what's happening. So now we're going to get Jane to come in here and talk with us. Jane Davidson from Australia. I am just so excited. She's a very good friend of mine. We are co-authors for the Splendid Sampler books, which I know a lot of you quilters have followed with us in the years past. And so, Jane, thank you for coming on here in a very early morning chat for our time zone difference.
Thank you, Pat, for inviting me. It's so good to hear your voice again.
I know. It just seems like forever. And then it just seems like yesterday, doesn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. So let everybody know where you are in Australia.
I am a Queenslander and I live in Brisbane. And it's a very warm subtropical climate. So I'm in the middle of winter now, and we're in the mid to high 20s Celsius, that is. Mm-hmm. Beautiful sunny days. So that's where I am.
Yeah. Now, you have always, I've met you as a quilter. So, but you probably didn't start quilting from birth. Was quilting something you did like later after, or were there quilters in your family?
No. My eldest sister is a very good artist, but that was mainly painting. We all did crafts, and Mum did sew on her sewing machine, although I self-taught myself most of the crafts.
Yeah.
And I did doll dress. I made doll dresses when I was really little.
Yeah.
Victorian style doll dresses.
Oh,
with,
Victorian ones. That's fancy, Jane.
They're all hand sewn with little bustles and everything.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I was about 19 when I'd left school that my friend Rosemary and I, she said, "Oh, there's an American tutor at the Hurstville quilt shop, and do you want to learn quilting with me?" And I said, "Yeah, let's do it." So it was one of those classes. She was great, but it was back in the day when we had to hand cut everything out. So I made up my first original pattern, which was a 13-piece shell, which we used in the Splendid sampler.
Yes.
Yeah, the mini version. And I hand traced, hand cut, hand sewed, and hand quilted that queen size quilt.
And that was not an easy block, Jane. That was a little bit more advanced.
Yeah, I've always liked challenge.
Yeah, you do.
If it's not dangerous, it's not worth doing was my motto. So from then on, like I went to university to biomedical science, worked in between. I made a few little baby quilts and things like that. Never lost a passion for it. But it wasn't until 2010 that I started getting serious again.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I know that you and I met because you were doing some sort of a tour and you were having different designers. And so I was like, okay, yeah. Hi, Jane. Yeah, I'll just do this with you. That sounds like fun. And we've been good friends since.
Yes.
Now, you know, one of the things, Jane, that you do that I think would be very interesting for everybody to sort of get a peek into is entering competition and doing work for competition, because you find that fun and interesting and challenging. But how does that work? What are some tips that you'd give people?
Well, I've only entered a few competitions, and look, I'm not that aggressive in entering as some other people are. I prefer to do my own thing and enjoy the process of getting it in there, whether I win or not. But with competition, you always have to have, you always follow their rules. So you'll get a guidance, and it will be from putting it together to the correct way to do a binding and how to square, and all those things need to be in place. With competitions too, don't be ever upset that you think your quilt was the best and it didn't win. There are different judges all the time, and it is sometimes based on what they think or they like for that period of time.
Right.
But I always just say, do what you love and do it well, and enter it and just go with the flow.
So if you at certain points like had a design, Jane, where you're like, you know, I think this would be a good one for competition, or do you get more inspired by the challenge of the theme of the competition?
I get challenged more with the theme of the competition.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like there was a recent one with Moda for the grunges, and I didn't go traditional at all. Mine was, I found a photo of beautiful rolls in an Indian textile market, all placed on a shelf.
Yeah.
So I did applique all these different grunge colours and machined over the top of it to make the look like crinkly rolls all stacked up.
Yeah.
So it was quite odd and but it made an impact, and it didn't win or anything, but I love it. I have it hanging up in my room, and it just makes me happy.
Yes. Yeah, and I think that's such a key thing. If somebody wants to enter competition, I think your own passion and what you love about that piece of work that you're creating is going to shine through. And then when you're done, you own it. So it comes back to you, unless you win big, like one of the big shows where they keep it.
That's right. Or you sell them.
Or you sell them, right? Yeah. Oh, very cool. The other thing that you are involved with and really enjoy are your guilds. So you are, you're in a couple of different guilds. Why do you choose to do more than one guild?
Well, I've cut back over the last year. I'm only in really one guild now, which is the Brisbane Modern Quilters, which are the most fantastic group of people.
Yeah.
And I've sort of been helping out charities. I'm sort of leaning more towards helping out the charity quilts and general groups more. But our guild is about 65 local Brisbane's and a few from the country areas, and we do charity quilts there. We support each other. There are so many talented people. We do a lot of the craft shows. We do exhibitions, and we have the best admin team there that run it.
Oh, so that's nice.
We're very lucky here. Very lucky. Yeah.
It's always important to have good people in the group, and somebody, the groups can't run themselves. So somebody, there always has to be some leaders, and it's nice when they all are real cohesive like that. So, I encourage people to try out a guild, and I think you probably feel the same, if they've never done it before, never joined one before.
That's right. And because we have so many people in the Brisbane Guild, I'm a North Brisbane person, so every Saturday, first Saturday of the month, I share it with another lady that's up the Glasshouse Mountains. I have about 10 people here from North, and we do the modern quilting here at my place, and then we'll go up to the beautiful Glasshouse Mountains the other Saturday.
Mm. Oh, that's fun. Yeah.
Oh, it is. It's versatile. Yeah, it's good. Nice.
So because the other question I wanted to have you chat on, and then we'll do some Q&A, is, from the people, but you love, when we did this one in Sampler, those were 6-inch blocks. And when you and I first talked about this, doing something together, because I said, Jane, you want to do something together? And you're like, yes, I'm in. And then you're like, okay, it has to be 6-inch blocks and there has to be 100 of them. And I about fainted, because I don't do 6-inch blocks. And so I'm like, oh. And for those of you wondering what this Fun and Sampler is a book, and we did a little sew along, and I'll put links down in the comments section of this event, or a new post with it, so you won't miss out on the links. But they're doing small patchwork. That's your comfort zone. So what are a couple of tips you have for that?
Okay, with small patchwork, one good thing is to use good quality fabric, and starching it does help stabilize these little pieces. Mm-hmm. Also, it's important to have, I use a nice sharp new needle every time I'm going to start, so the needle doesn't pick. And it's important to have on your machine, I'm lucky, I have a single hole plate in my machine. So that helps it so the material's not sucked down. Mm-hmm. And also use, the little leaders and enders. So just a scrap piece to lead on, so that the material the first push isn't sucking it down. Right. And do it slowly. Don't race, because you want to guide those little pieces through, and you want to get a sharp stiletto or something at the end, just to make sure that you're straight when you're coming through the end. And then with little piecing, you can flip your seams to one way if you want, but because they're so close together, opening them is a nice idea, or where you just undo a few stitches in the middle and press your thumb and flatten the seam in the middle. Yeah. So that's it, but just slow down and take your time, cut them accurately, and enjoy the process as you go.
Yeah. Do you use a smaller stitch length?
Sometimes I do. I'm trying to. I've just bought a new machine, a lovely Janome. So
it's gorgeous.
I'm so happy with it. I just leave. It's got an HP foot, which is the high performance foot, which brings you to you can just run anything through it, and never sucks it down. It never goes off to. Oh, it's beautiful. I love it. Sorry, I just did my plug for Janome. Yeah. I'm finding that depending on the fabric and how it works, I will leave the stitch at the normal stitch length, which is about 2.5, I believe. Mm-hmm. If it's sort of, I can see it stressing on it, but bring it down smaller if it's working well, because I do like a smaller stitch, to between 1.8 and 2 on the Janome.
Yeah. Good. Those are really, really good tips. Let's do a few Q&A because I asked some of our group to what they would like to know from you. You know, we do have a fairly large group of Australian quilt makers in my community. So waving to all of you out there that are from Australia. So Todd asked, he would love to hear if there are any different types of fabrics or any different types of quilting styles that are popular in Australia that we don't see so much here in the United States.
Well, Todd, I tend to see in our quilting community a lot of colour. We love colour. We love to do quilts. If we do applique quilts based on the flora and fauna. And then we also do, because we have a large global influence from the rest of the world, we do a lot of Japanese-style quilts, the traditional American English quilts, and use all those fabrics from the same motor and makeover and P&B and all the rest. With the quilting styles too, we have a large textile art niche as well. So textile art will be using thread painting, different textures, painting on thread and making scenes and quilts out of that. So that's a big one here too, the textile design.
Oh, that's neat. Yeah, I didn't realize that.
Yes, there's a lot of very good Australian designers that do that.
So another question came, and a couple people asked this. Janet asked this, Melody asked this, that you know, are there traditional Australian fabric designs, something, you know, like indigenous designs that, you know, outside of Australia, we will look at a fabric and say, oh, that's an Australian fabric. How do you all use those? Do you use them? Are they actually, do you use them in your quilting?
They are available commercially now. So I'll explain Indigenous art. Mm-hmm. Indigenous art was the First Nations, it's a spiritual thing for them. Mm-hmm. So in all their paintings, it is stories they're telling. And they also do a thing called the song lines. So if you see a painting, the beautiful dots that are weaving through and there's animals, what the song lines were maps to tell people how to find food and water holes and how to transverse the lands. Mm-hmm. And so when you see the Indigenous fabric that has been commercially printed, you will see many of these stories in it. Mm-hmm. So to us, they're beautiful pieces of artwork that we can incorporate into quilts. Mm-hmm. It's a spiritual thing, and it's their stories. Mm-hmm. And it, while Australians use them in their quilts, they don't use them a lot to make Indigenous artwork in their quilts. So right. And we tried to, there are companies that are Indigenous owned and supported that produce the fabric, and then there's commercially done. So that's the way. And it's like, and we also have just little niches where there was a famous Australian author, one of my favourite, May Gibbs, and she did beautiful, beautiful illustrations, and she wrote these books called The Gumnut Baby, Snugglepot and Cuddlepie. Mm-hmm. And a lot of fabric has been printed, so that's truly Australian, they're little fabrics. And we have a lot of digital printing now, and they do, Hanson's one of them, and she does Australian birds and flowers, really modern and bright and colourful. They're lovely fabrics. So that's
well, that's really, I think that's gives everybody a really good feel for what we're seeing when we see that type of indigenous art now on fabric. Yeah, cool. So another question. You right now are in your cooler temperature versus where we are in the middle of summer. You're in the middle of your winter. Kathy had a question. Do you use any kind of special battings when it's, because your country is probably warmer than we are here in the US?
Australia is quite large and from top to bottom. So at the top, it's hot all year round. Mm-hmm. Where I am, it's hot. And we do get a few cooler months. I'd say they wouldn't be cool for you, but they're cool for us. And then down the bottom of Australia, Melbourne, Victoria, and Tasmania, it can get really cold.
Yeah.
So I'm a long armour too, and my most popular one is your cottons. So cottons are used mostly to do everyone's quilts. They'll function all year round, whether it's to hang on the wall over your chair or put on your kid's bed.
Yeah.
And then we've got the wool and poly wools, so they come out in seconds. But cotton is Australia's number one, I would say. And then if you're doing your hand-stitched quilts and that, you use the beautiful synthetic polyesters, very lightweight ones to be able to quilt through, and they drape beautifully.
Yeah. That's so. Are you still doing? You're still doing lots of long arming for other people?
Not lots of long arming. I've cut that right back. I've really want to get back into a lot of design and quilt making and so I do it. I've got a nice group of customers and they just keep the flow. Yeah.
That's always good. It's always good to, and they're not giving your name out. They're like, no, she's mine.
That's good.
That's right. It's like, and I know I have one of the splendid samplers that you quilted, so I am like so happy to have some of your quilting here at my home.
I've got the beautiful traditional one here too.
Yes, we both got one with 100 blocks from the two books. Yeah. So cool. Okay, let's do one other question, which I'm not sure there's really an answer for this one, Jane, but Brenda wanted to know if there was a popular pattern in Australia that a lot of quilt makers make. Sometimes there's a pattern that'll go around that like everybody's making it. Like years ago it was the yellow brick road. A lot of people, the shops all had those in their store. A new fabric line came in, they made a yellow brick road. So a lot of people were familiar with Terry Atkinson's design.
Yes.
Do you have anything like that going on in Australia right now?
Well, I can only speak from what I see come through the door and through our groups and through the charities. A lot of people do that. Is it the disappearing nine patch?
Yes, disappearing nine patch.
So I think the most popular ones for those sort of groups, and if you want to do a quick quilt, are the free ones you find on the internet from Jenny Doan and places like
Jordan Fabrics has a lot of free patterns. Fat Quarter Shop has a lot of free patterns. So so you see those, pretty much what we're doing here.
Yes. we do sort of follow in your shadow a little bit with that side of it.
Yeah. With all and I think it's so international. I mean, like I tell people, when can you, think back, 20 years ago, you couldn't wake up and look on your phone and see what your friend in Australia just made. I mean, that's right. And now you can. I mean, so it's basically the barriers are totally gone. What we're all doing is similar across countries because we can see each other's work and be inspired by each other and be friends with each other, real friends. So it's so exciting. So what is you to go ahead?
Oh no, it's wonderful. And I was saying during this COVID thing, a lot of us have been Zooming together and sewing.
Yes.
So from everywhere. It's been beautiful. It's great.
It has. And hopefully that'll continue for people that, you can't get together because you have a long distance. And so, you still have a way to see each other and hang out. So I wanted, before we wrap up chat, is like, what are you currently working on?
I'm currently I'm writing the pattern for that one I call Circus, which is very small piece.
No, small.
Yeah, 6-degree diamond. I thought it's really fun. I've got little templates for it.
Yeah.
And the second one, I sat down and looked at my cup and I've got a lot of blue. And I've been seeing a lot of blue and white quilts. So I've done this really simple, it's 9 patch. But what I did for some of the 9 patches, I printed through spoon flower the little drunken path, the 2.5-inch drunken path.
Oh.
So I just cut them out and I put them in. So it's forming a little wave through it.
Oh, neat.
So but I'm going to write up a pattern for that one, but not with the cheap fabric.
Right.
Little ones. So I'm just doing a few little pads, but I'm going to enter Quiltcon. So I'm started on a one for that. Yeah. And I've got another one here I might put in because I do enjoy putting things into Quiltcon.
For those of you who aren't familiar with Quiltcon, it is a show that is done by the Modern Quilt Guild, which is an umbrella guild and has chapters all over the world, which is what Jane was talking about, being in the Modern Quilt Guild chapter in her area. So Quiltcon is, where is it going to be?
Is it Pasadena?
Pasadena? Is it going to be in California? Yeah, you look on their website.
All I'll have to do if I get in is just post it over there.
Right. You just have to mail it.
Mail it. I won't be able to go. So. Yeah.
Now, for people who are local-ish to you, are you giving any workshops, or are you taking workshops from guilds in the area that you can go and visit?
Well, it's been hard with the COVID too because our states keep locking down, but I did manage to finally get down to the lovely people in Hobart. That's Tasmania. That was a fantastic weekend. But things have been slow in that teaching area due to the restrictions. That's something I would love to do, is set up, once they lift a lot of the restrictions, I would love to have workshops, small workshops myself rather than go around to places. I enjoy teaching.
Yeah, you do. You really do, and you're very good. People should all come take your classes, Jane.
Thank you.
So where can they get all the information about you?
Well, I'm on Quilt Jane is my so you can find me on Instagram. My website, which I'm slowly going to do up, is quiltjane.com, and my Facebook, though, is Want It, Need It Quilt for the business side. And I don't mind you, diving into my... I put down all my names, so if anyone from my old school or anyone want to find me around the world, they will. So it's Jane Shalala Davidson Quilt Jane on Facebook. But if you put Quilt Jane in, I think you'll find me. So,
yeah, you'll find you. Quilt Jane will come up everywhere, so you can...
And on Pinterest, I'm Quilt Jane as well. Yeah.
Well, this has been so much fun to have a chat and get to talk to you again and hear your lovely voice, Jane.
Oh, it's so lovely to catch up with you, Pat. I miss you so much, and I'm just looking forward when I can jump on a flight, probably in year 2025, and come and see you all again.
Right? Okay, it's a date. Okay, well, thank you, Jane, and we'll catch up soon.
Oh, thank you, Pat. Have a lovely evening. Bye.
Bye.
I am so happy to be able to chat with both Jane and Rachel today for this very first live audio show for my Quilt Along with Pat Sloan. It has been amazing to have all of you here. I would love for you to check out my website, I Love to Make Quilts, where you can get all the information about what's going on and join in with my sew-alongs. So thank you. Hit that little button so I can say goodbye and say I love you to all of you. Mwah. See you online.